The twin suns of Thalrin rose over the silver towers of the alien capital. From space, the city looked like a sea of glass and light, but to the humans standing in its center, it felt cold and sharp. Captain Daniel Cross of the Earth Defense Fleet walked through the wide marble corridor, guided by two silent guards whose armor shimmered like liquid metal. He had faced storms, battles, and near death in war. But nothing prepared him for this strange summons. Only hours before, his ship had been called into orbit around Thalron. The message from the alien court was short. Human representative requested. Orders of high ceremony. Compliance required. He had thought it was about the recovery of missing soldiers, survivors of a crashed human frigate. But the moment he entered the Grand Hall, he realized the truth was different. Thousands of eyes turned to him. The Thalrin were tall, graceful, their skin pale gold under the light. They moved with the calm precision of dancers. At the far end of the hall sat the high judges for ancient beings, whose eyes glowed faintly blue, symbols of authority for half the galaxy. Daniel stopped in the middle of the hall, boots echoing on polished stone. Every step sounded too loud. He saluted by instinct, though no one returned it. A soft voice, clear as a bell, spoke from above. "Human Captain Daniel Cross, you stand before the Court of Union." He looked up. The speaker was a woman, her face covered with a transparent veil. "Court of Union?" he repeated. "I came here to discuss the rescue of my crew, not the matter of your crew will be resolved," the judge said. "But by law, a representative of any allied species must participate in the right of continuance. You have been chosen. You will choose a companion among the newly adult Thalrin daughters." For a second, Daniel thought he had misheard. The hall was silent, except for the distant hum of light crystals. "A companion?" The judge nodded. "It is a union of ceremony, symbol of peace. The bond strengthens understanding between species. The daughters stand ready." The doors opened behind him. A line of young Thalrin women entered, each dressed in flowing silver garments, their faces calm, but their eyes uncertain. They moved like reflections of light, beautiful and distant. Daniel's breath caught, not because of attraction, but because he felt trapped inside a story he didn't belong in. One of the judges spoke again. "By our law, you must choose before the second sun reaches its peak. Decline, and your people's rights within Thalrin space will be reviewed." So that was it. A threat disguised as tradition. Diplomacy with chains around it. Daniel's hands clenched behind his back. He looked at the silent women, then at the judges. "With respect, I am not here for a ritual. Humanity values freedom of choice. I can't accept this." The words fell heavy in the hall. Every alien froze, as if the air itself had stopped. Whispers began to rise from the balconies above. The judge's voice sharpened. "Refusal is dishonor. Do you wish to dishonor this court, Captain?" Daniel met the glowing eyes without fear. "If honor means forcing others into a promise they didn't choose, then yes, I'll take dishonor." The whispering turned into a wave. The guards stiffened. One raised his weapon slightly, but the eldest judge lifted a hand. Silence returned. From the crowd, a soft movement broke the stillness. One of the young women stepped forward. She was smaller than the others, her golden hair braided simply, her skin faintly violet under the twin suns. Unlike the others, she didn't lower her gaze. Her eyes' deep violet tomb hit his with quiet strength. The judge noticed her. "Arianai," he said sternly, "return to your place." But she didn't move. Instead, she spoke, her voice calm but trembling at the edges. "If the human refuses, perhaps he does so for reason, not disrespect." The hall gasped again. No one ever questioned the court in public. Daniel looked at her, surprised. She had risked punishment just to defend him. The eldest judge leaned forward. "You speak out of turn, Arianai of House Veth. Do you claim to understand this human?" She lowered her head slightly. "No, High Judge, I only feel." His words carry weight. He does not lie. Daniel almost smiled. There was something pure in her courage, something human, though she was not. The judges conferred in silence, their telepathic glow flickering between them. Finally, the eldest spoke again. "Captain Cross, your defiance will not be ignored. Yet you have until tomorrow's dawn to reconsider. Guards will escort you to guest quarters. You will remain under observation." The sound of metal echoed as the guards moved. Daniel nodded stiffly. Understood. As he turned to leave, he glanced once more at Arianai. She was still standing there, hands clasped, eyes following him. Something in her expression said she wanted to speak, but couldn't. He gave her a small nod. Silent thank you. The guest chambers overlooked the endless towers of Thauron City. Daniel stood by the window, watching the twin suns sink lower. The air shimmered with energy fields that powered the city's floating bridges. It was beautiful and lifeless at the same time. He activated his wrist communicator. Static filled the air. No response from orbit. The Thauron had blocked all signals, keeping him cut off from his ship. "Great," he muttered. A guest with golden cuffs, soft chime interrupted his thoughts. The door opened, and Arianai stepped inside, escorted by a drone. She bowed slightly. "Forgive me, Captain. I came without full permission." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "I guessed that. Why are you here?" She looked at the drone, then waved her hand. The device drifted back outside and closed the door. "Because you spoke of freedom," she said quietly. "No one here speaks that word." "Not anymore." Daniel frowned. "You mean they can't?" "They don't dare," she replied. "The court says choice brings disorder. Every match, every life path, every duty is all decided by law. Even we, the daughters chosen for the right, did not choose to stand there." He felt a chill that had nothing to do with the room's temperature. "You're saying the others were forced?" She nodded once. "For honor of families, for balance of bloodlines. We must obey. But when you refused, some of us felt something. New." She searched for the word. "Hope." Daniel looked at her, trying to read her alien expression. Beneath the calm surface, there was fear, but also quiet fire. "Arianai," he said slowly, "where I come from, hope is stronger than any law. But it also makes enemies." Her lips curved in a faint smile. "Then perhaps it is worth it." They stood in silence for a moment, the hum of the city filling the air. Finally, Daniel spoke. "Tomorrow, I'll have to face them again. They'll want an answer." She nodded. "They will expect your surrender. Then I'll surprise them." Her eyes widened slightly. "You will still refuse?" He smiled faintly. "I don't break easy, but I'll need to understand their rules before I bend them." Arianai hesitated, then stepped closer. "I can help you. But if they learn I did, I'll be punished." Daniel crossed his arms. "Why risk it?" She met his gaze directly. "Because you risked yourself for us." For the first time since he landed, Daniel felt something shift inside him. Not pity, not attraction, but respect. The kind that soldiers feel for those who stand beside them against fear. "All right," he said finally. "Tell me what I need to know." All through the night, Arianai explained the old customs, the hidden meanings behind the rite, the way the judges used it to bind other species in loyalty. Daniel listened carefully, memorizing every word. The more he learned, the clearer it became. This was not a union of peace, but a system of control disguised as honor. Before dawn, Arianai stood to leave. "Captain, when you face them tomorrow, remember this: our people watch. Even if they stay silent, they will hear what you say." Daniel nodded. "Then I'll make sure they hear something worth remembering." She gave a small bow and slipped out through the side passage. Vanishing like a shadow, Daniel sat by the window again as the first light of morning touched the city. The second sun began to rise, painting gold across the alien skyline. He closed his eyes and whispered to himself, "If they want a ceremony, I'll give them one they'll never forget." The twin suns met above the horizon, signaling the coming trial. Across Thauron, thousands prepared to watch. None knew that a single human's choice was about to shake an empire that had forgotten freedom itself. The next morning began with the ringing of crystal bells that echoed through the entire alien capital. The air shimmered with golden light as the twin suns climbed over the horizon. Captain Daniel Cross woke before dawn, unable to rest. His thoughts replayed Arianai's words again and again. Our people watch. He stood by the window of his chamber, watching the city come alive below. Silver ships glided through the air, leaving bright trails behind them. Far away, the high towers of the alien court reflected the light like frozen fire. Today, he would stand there again before the same judges, the same eyes, but this time he would not walk out quietly. The door opened without warning. 2 armored guards entered, their metal suits humming softly. One of them said, "Captain Cross, the court awaits. You will come with us." Daniel nodded, straightening his uniform. "Lead the way." The great hall of the court looked even larger than before. The crowd had doubled overnight. Reporters, nobles, citizens, all had gathered to see the strange human who dared to refuse the will of the judges. Floating drones hovered in the air, recording every movement. Daniel walked down the long path to the center, the sound of his boots echoing through the silence. The 4 high judges were already seated, their faces cold and unreadable. The eldest one, the one with glowing blue eyes, spoke first. "Human Captain Daniel Cross, you were given a full rotation to reflect upon your refusal. Have you reconsidered your decision?" Daniel met his gaze steadily. "I have reflected," he said, "and I've made my choice." A low murmur spread across the room. The judge raised an eyebrow, then stated. Daniel looked around the vast hall, his eyes scanning the faces of the young alien women standing once more in a line behind the judges. Their silver garments shimmered softly, their expressions uncertain. He saw fear in most of their eyes, fear of being chosen, fear of not being chosen, fear of the court itself. Then his gaze found Ariane. She stood near the end of the line, calm but tense, her hands clasped in front of her. Her violet eyes met his for an instant. Daniel took a breath. "I choose Ariane of House Veth." For a moment the hall went completely silent. Then chaos erupted. Voices rose in shock, gasps filled the air, and the sound of boots clanged as guards moved instinctively forward. The eldest judge's expression darkened. "You choose the lowest daughter? The one without rank? Without standing?" Daniel nodded. "I do. This is mockery." One of the other judges hissed. "You insult our tradition, our ceremony?" Daniel raised his voice so everyone could hear. "No, I honor it by giving it meaning." The hall fell silent again, confused by his tone. He stepped forward, his words slow and steady. "You said this union was meant to symbolize peace. But what kind of peace forces people to obey? What kind of bond begins with fear?" Somewhere in the balconies above, a few aliens whispered to each other. Daniel continued, voice rising with passion. "You call it honor. I call it a cage. You call it duty. I call it slavery of choice. If this ceremony truly represents unity, then it should begin with someone who still believes in freedom." He turned toward Ariane, and she does. Ariane's eyes widened slightly, surprise and emotion flickering across her face. The hall was silent again, but this time, it was not the silence of anger. It was the silence of thought. One of the younger judges leaned forward. "You think to lecture us on our customs, human? You are one man, standing against 1,000 years of order." Daniel met his gaze without blinking. "Then maybe it's time your 1,000 years had a conversation with a single human heart." The words echoed through the hall. Even the drones seemed to pause in the air. The eldest judge finally rose from his seat. His robes shimmered like liquid steel. "You defy us in our own hall. You twist our sacred ceremony to your will. Do you think the Empire will allow this?" Daniel straightened his shoulders. "I don't know what your Empire will allow, but I know what's right. If peace means obedience, you don't want peace. You want silence." A ripple of murmurs spread through the crowd again. The judge raised his hand. "Enough, guards." Before the order could be finished, a clear voice rang out. "Stop." It was Ariane. She stepped forward, trembling but firm. Her voice carried across the hall. I accept his choice. The hall gasped again. The judge turned toward her, fury flashing in his eyes. You dare speak without leave? I do, she said. Because you told us this was a bond of peace, not a chain of command. You taught us that unity is sacred, yet you use it to control. He has shown us what unity should truly mean. The crowd began to stir, voices whispering louder. Daniel looked at her with quiet respect. She was risking everything, her name, her safety, for truth. The eldest judge slammed his staff against the floor, a deep sound of thunder. Enough, guards, remove them both. But before the guards could move, someone else spoke, an elder noble from the crowd. High Judge, the human's words have weight. If the right is truly sacred, then should not choice be part of it? Another voice joined in. Yes. Let her speak. Then another. He did not insult us. He reminded us what the right once meant. Within seconds, the hall was alive with noise, hundreds of voices rising. Some angry, some supportive, all filled with emotion. The high judges looked at each other, uncertain for the first time. Daniel stayed still, watching quietly. He had not expected rebellion, only honesty. Yet his words had started something far greater. Finally, the eldest judge lifted his hand again, calling for silence. His voice came slow, heavy, controlled. Very well. If the human insists on this choice, and if the chosen consents, the right shall proceed. But understand, Captain, by law, this union binds you to the Empire's service. You will be watched. You will be judged. Daniel gave a faint smile. That's fine. I've been judged before. The ceremony began, though not as anyone had expected. The grand music of the court filled the hall, soft and distant. Daniel and Arianai stood at the center, facing each other beneath a glowing arch of crystal light. Tradition demanded. They placed their palms together, a symbolic gesture of trust. Arianai hesitated only for a heartbeat, then lifted her hand. Her skin felt cool and light against his. A surge of light passed through the arch, marking the bond. Cheers erupted, some genuine, some forced. The eldest judge declared, the rite is complete. The Empire recognizes the union. Daniel bowed his head slightly. Then the Empire has recognized choice, too. Arianai's lips curved into a faint, uncertain smile. Later that day, after the ceremony, they were escorted to the outer gardens of the palace. The air smelled of metallic flowers and strange wind currents. Guards stood at every gate. Daniel looked at her. You didn't have to do that, he said softly. She shook her head. Yes, I did. You showed them that even in the center of power, truth can still be spoken. He sighed, looking at the horizon where alien towers touched the sky. They won't forget this, and they won't forgive it easily. Then we'll stand together, she said quietly. He turned to her, surprised. You mean that? She nodded. If I learned anything from you, Captain, it's that courage is not in strength. It's in standing for what is right, even when you stand alone. Daniel smiled faintly. You're learning too fast. For a moment, the two stood in silence. The wind carried the sound of the city, but there was a strange stillness in their hearts. As night fell over Thaurin, lights across the capital flickered with new energy. Messages spread through the data network, fragments of the ceremony broadcast beyond the court's control. Millions saw the human speech. Millions heard the word choice. In the quiet darkness of his chamber, Daniel sat by the window again. Arianai entered quietly, holding a glowing data crystal. Captain, she said softly, they're spreading your words. The people are listening. Daniel looked up surprised. Already? Yes, she said. Some call you a hero. Others call you a rebel. But all are speaking, and that has not happened here for a long time. Daniel smiled faintly. Words can be dangerous things. Arianai looked at him with calm determination. Then let them be dangerous. It's time someone reminded this empire that peace is not silence. Daniel leaned back, staring at the stars through the window. Then let's see how far a single voice can travel.
Outside.
The alien sky shimmered, not just with the glow of the city, but with the quiet fire of change that had begun to spread. tomorrow. The judges would try to control the story. Tomorrow, the Empire would react. But for tonight, one human and one alien stood side by side, knowing that a single act of courage had shaken an empire built on obedience, and far above the city. The human fleet waited, unaware that their captain had already started a revolution, with nothing but honesty, choice, and heart. The city of Thalrin never slept. Its lights burned through the night like stars trapped on the ground. But that evening, the glow felt different. It wasn't only the towers shining, it was the people. The story of the human captain had spread through every data stream, every hologram, every whisper. Daniel Cross had stood before the Court of Union and refused to kneel. He had chosen not out of fear or gain, but out of principle. And now, that act had become a symbol across the Empire. From his chamber, Daniel could see the silver horizon where the suns were beginning to rise again. He hadn't slept. His thoughts were racing. He knew what came next. The Empire would not stay silent. Ari and I entered quietly, her soft steps barely making a sound on the polished floor. She wore a simple robe now, without the ceremonial patterns of her house. "They are restless," she said. "Every network speaks your name. Some praise you. Others demand punishment." Daniel turned to face her. "That's how change begins, with noise." She looked out the window beside him. "The judges have called for an emergency gathering. They will speak before the people at dawn. I don't think they mean to honor you." Daniel smiled faintly. Didn't expect them to. Picked up his communicator and looked at it for a moment. It still couldn't connect to his ship. The Thalrin blockade remained in place. He was alone, except for her. "You don't regret what you did, do you?" Ariane asked. He shook his head. "No. Do you?" She hesitated, then said softly, "I was raised to obey. I never imagined that one word, no, could hold such power." "It's not the word that has power. It's the reason behind it." Outside, the first bell rang, the sound that marked the start of the court's broadcast. The grand plaza of Thalrin was filled with thousands of citizens. Holographic screens floated above the streets, showing the image of the four high judges. Their faces were calm, but the air carried tension like a storm. "The Empire has witnessed confusion," the eldest judge declared. "A ceremony of peace turned into chaos. A human outsider has misled our people. His words have caused disorder. He will be brought to judgment for his defiance." The crowd murmured uneasily. Somewhere in the middle of that sea of faces, small groups whispered different words. Words the judges feared. Freedom, choice, humanity, in the upper gallery of the palace. Daniel and Ari and I stood together, guarded by two sentinels. The sound of the judge's speech echoed even through the glass. Ari and I turned to him. "They will arrest you." Daniel nodded. "Probably, and me. They'll try to make an example of both of us." She exhaled slowly. "Then we cannot stay silent." Daniel looked at her, studying her expression, calm but determined. "You mean to speak before the whole city?" "Yes," she said. "If they call me traitor for believing in choice, then I'll wear that title proudly." Daniel placed a hand on her shoulder. "Then let's do it together." Minutes later, the broadcast changed. Across the city, the holographic screens flickered, and suddenly, instead of the judges' faces, the image of Ari and I and Daniel appeared. The crowd gasped. Even the judges froze in shock. Ariane's voice came clear and strong. "People of Thalrin," she began, her tone gentle yet powerful. "Yesterday you witnessed a ceremony that was meant to symbolize peace. But peace built on fear is not peace. It is silence." Her words carried across every home, every street, every tower. "I was chosen by law to stand as a daughter of obedience. But I learned from a human what it means to stand by conscience. He did not come here to conquer. He came to remind us that no law can decide the worth of a heart." Daniel stepped forward beside her. His voice followed hers, calm and steady. "I came here for my crew, not for politics. But I can't turn away when I see injustice. You taught me about your laws. Let me tell you about mine, the first law of humanity. Every person deserves the right to choose their own path.
Ah!
A silence spread over the plaza. The drones hovering above them recorded every word. Ear and I looked directly into the camera. If this is rebellion, then let it be the kind that saves us from becoming machines of obedience. The screens flickered again and then went dark. The broadcast had been cut. Within minutes, alarms echoed across the palace. The judges shouted orders. Guards rushed through corridors. Daniel grabbed Aaron I's hand and ran toward the outer gates. The corridors were filled with flashes of red light and echoing footsteps. "Where are we going?" she asked, breathless. "Anywhere that's not here," Daniel said. "If they catch us now, it's over." They turned down a narrow passage lined with crystal columns. Through the windows, they could see the crowd gathering outside the palace, not in anger, but in protest. Thousands had come, holding glowing orbs that pulsed with white light, the symbol of peace in Thauran culture. Erie and I slowed, stunned. "They're standing for us." Daniel looked out too. "No, they're standing for themselves." Guards appeared at the far end of the hall, weapons drawn. "Stop!" one shouted. Daniel and Ari and I ducked into another corridor. Daniel spotted a small maintenance shaft near the side wall. There. They climbed through, emerging into a service bay filled with old transport pods. Daniel pressed a control panel. One of the pods flickered to life. "Can you fly this?" Ariana asked. Daniel smiled faintly. "I can fly anything that moves." The pod lifted from the platform, engines humming softly. Through the front viewport, the palace grew smaller behind them. But as they rose higher, Daniel saw something that made his stomach tighten. The sky above the city was full of silver ships. The Imperial fleet. They were positioning themselves over the capital. "They're sealing the airspace," he muttered. "They're preparing for lockdown." And I clenched her fists. "They will strike their own people. They've done worse to keep control." He guided the pod through the upper towers, weaving between glowing bridges and defense drones. Then he saw it. A transmission beacon tower. "Still operational. If I can reach that tower, I can send a message to my ship," he said. "We'll need their help." Ari and I nodded. "Then hurry." As they approached the tower, sirens blared below. A group of pursuit drones appeared behind them, firing warning blasts. Daniel spun the pod sharply, the beams flashing past the cockpit. "Hold on," he shouted. Iriani gripped the edge of the seat. "I trust you." He smiled briefly, then pushed the pod into a dive, swooping beneath a bridge before pulling up sharply toward the tower's base. The maneuver threw the drones off course, and within seconds, they reached the landing platform. Daniel jumped out, scanning for access controls. Iriani followed, her eyes wide with determination. Together, they forced open the door and entered the communications hub. Inside, the tower hummed with energy. Daniel's fingers flew over the controls. Come on. Then the screen flashed, connection established. "This is Captain Cross of the Earth Defense Fleet," he said urgently. "Authorization code Delta 7. Broadcasting from within Thauran Prime. Do not engage hostiles. Repeat, do not engage. We're not at war, but we need your transmission power to spread this message galaxy-wide." Static buzzed for a moment, then a voice came through. "Captain, we read you." Standing by, Daniel nodded to Ari and I. "Say it again?" "Say it to everyone." She stepped forward, her hands trembling slightly, but her voice firm. "This is Ariana of Thauran. To every world that hears me, remember this. Peace without choice is not peace. The age of silence is over. We will not be bound by fear." The message echoed through the stars, transmitted across fleets, stations, and planets. The words carried beyond the Empire's control. When the judges finally reached the tower, it was too late. The broadcast had already spread beyond their reach. Daniel and Ari and I were taken into custody. But something had already changed. Crowds filled the streets, not with weapons, but with light. The people refused to move until the judges agreed to free the prisoners. Days passed, then weeks, and slowly the Empire began to shift. Months later, Daniel stood once more in the Grand Hall, not as a prisoner, but as a guest. The banners of the Empire had been replaced by a new symbol, two hands joined under twin suns. Arianne stood beside him, dressed not as a ceremonial daughter, but as an ambassador. The eldest judge, now humbled, addressed the assembly. Let it be known that from this day, no being shall be bound by law to serve where the heart does not choose. The right of continuance is ended. In its place, the pact of freedom shall stand. The hall erupted in applause. Daniel glanced at Arianne. You did it, she smiled softly. No, Captain. We did it. Outside, the plaza was alive with celebration. Music filled the air. For the first time in generations, Thalrin felt alive. Daniel looked up at the sky, where human and Thalrin ships floated side by side. Funny, he said quietly. I came here to rescue a few of my people. Instead, I helped rescue a world. Erie and I turned to him. And you taught us something we had forgotten, that peace isn't given by rulers. It's built by those brave enough to speak. He nodded, a small smile on his lips. Then let's make sure we never stop speaking. As the twin suns shone over the city, their light reflected across the faces of thousands, humans and aliens alike, standing together. Not as conquerors or subjects, but as equals. And in that light, the legend of the human who defied an empire was born, not a story of war, but of choice, courage, and humanity's endless belief that freedom belongs to everyone.